Mm. Okay, good morning. Welcome to our virtual classroom. So, ginawa ko itong video na to para po dun sa mga hindi talaga kayang maka-attend on time or probably yung mga noong time na nakaschedule po yung actual na na face what do you call this lecture, online lecture. Either wala silang data, mahina po yung internet or kung ano man po ang reason. Pero ginawa na rin po natin to para at least meron pong pwedeng balik-balikan yung mga students. Now, so by the way, I will be your teacher. Of course, you probably met me before. I am Mr. Dennis Alfred M. Pascual. Okay, so without further ado po, let's start with the lecture. Now, if you're actually with me live no sa ating lecture, alam kong makikita po ninyo na itong free test natin ay magbibigay po ako ng link. Pero syempre, kung ito pinapanood nyo pong video na to as a supplement ninyo, so wala po tayong bibigay ng link. Excuse me. Okay, let's proceed. Now, I will be putting the links of these videos sa baba po ng description box ng video na to para mapuntahan nyo ito. So, class, what do you think is curiosity? Ano po ba sa tingin ninyo ang nagbibigay sa inyo ng mga tanong sa utak ninyo whenever you see something that will, of course, give you lots of different questions, and even though you can answer some of them, sometimes the answers will give you more questions. Diba? Excuse me. Yan. Have you ever encountered something that made you wonder? Something that caught your curiosity? What do you do to satisfy your thirst for knowledge? Now, we have this Jamboard activity. Of course, now, yung question po natin before dyan, yung nga po ipakita nyo nga sa akin kung ano po ang inyong mga sagot doon. Of course, sa live consultation, mas magkakaroon po tayo ng interaction. Excuse me. Now, please look at the figure below. So, makikita nyo dyan, ito po yung steps ng scientific investigation. Yan, sinabi na po natin basically yung topic. Pero, we will elaborate more on this diagram later on. Huwag nyo muna problemahin masyado. Just scan the picture. Tingnan nyo po may ask a question. Do a background check. Formulate hypothesis, conduct experiment, collect and analyze data. Now, dito, makikita ninyo yung decision-making process nyo kung correct po ba or kung hindi correct or nag-fail lang yung hypothesis ko, ano po yung mga susunod ninyong gagawin. Like what I've said, we're going to elaborate more on that later. So, gaya nga po na nasabi natin kanina, ang ating pong topic ay scientific investigation. This is for grade 7 science, quarter 1, week 1. And nakikita po ninyong picture dyan is basically the officially issued ng self-learning module ng SDO Quezon City. So, yung expectations for this module, you are expected to describe the components of scientific investigation. You need to identify the components of an investigation research problem, hypothesis, method for testing hypothesis, and conclusion based on evidence. Isa po sa mga expectation, of course, is for you to be able to differentiate qualitative from quantitative observation. You need to identify the independent, dependent, and controlled variables. Formulate hypothesis, collect, organize, and interpret data about the investigation. Now again, meron po tayong pre-test. Sa live po nating lecture, bibigay po natin yung link sa excuse me, sa chat box po nating Gym. Okay? Now, scientific investigation as a definition po sa ating module. Scientific investigation is a systematic process of collecting and analyzing information to gain scientific knowledge. produces evidence that helps answer questions and problems. Now, balik po tayo sa parang introduction natin kanina. Diba? Basically, your journey, so to speak, para po bago ka pumunta dito sa method na to, it will actually start with what? A question. Something that will arouse your curiosity. Ano po ba ito? Paano nangyari yan? Paano ko kaya gagawin ito? Diba? Ganon. And ang scientific investigation basically something na systematic. Sabi nga po dito systematic. Hindi po siya bara-bara. Hindi siya kung ano lang maisip mo, yun ang gagawin mo. So, based na rin po dyan sa definition, makikita nyo na there are certain steps that you have to follow. O hindi po ba? So, step 1, of course, excuse me, you need to identify the problem or question. You need to define the problem, sabi nga po sa ating illustration dyan, no? Develop a problem or question that can be answered through experimentation. For example, what will happen to the growth of the plant if the soil temperature increases? Example lang po ng question yan. Ano pa po ba mga question na pwede mong i-apply sa daily life mo? For example, matagal kayang maluluto ang scrambled egg kung hihinaan ko yung apoy? Ganon. Or, gaano kaya katamis yung iced tea na ititimpla ko, yung litro pack na iced tea ko, kung ang ilalagay ko ay 2 liters ng water? Yan. Yung mga tipong ganong tanong ko. So basically, there are lots of different questions, pero sabi nga, hindi rin naman po lahat answerable by experimentation. So stick lang din po muna tayo sa definition of scientific investigation. Excuse me. Next, observation or research. So make observations, research on topics of your interest. So basically, alam naman natin na syempre dapat related dun sa tanong mo yung iyong i-research. For example, ang tanong mo po tungkol sa dagat, sabay ang i-research mo po tungkol sa planets. Syempre hindi naman dapat ganun, no? So your observation and research, bukod po sa associated of course sa interest mo, dapat connected din siya doon sa question. Kasi step by step process nga naman po yan, hindi ba? Okay, number 3, should formulate a hypothesis or predict a possible answer to the problem. Kung makikita nyo yung illustration na pinili ko, di ba parang ano yan, yung ginagamit ng mga manghuhula, yung perlas na bilog, sabi nga. Now, syempre pinagkaiba po niya sa mga manghuhula. Ang mga tao sa hypothesis, di ba, it's the scientific guess. Okay, scientific guess. So, syempre, it is something that you will ask that's related to the problem, which will then lead you to the next step, which is going to answer your hypothesis. Oh, by the way, before we proceed, itong number 3, steps 3, hanggang sa makarating ka sa conclusion, ay pwede magpa-ulit-ulit. Actually, di ba kung naalala po ninyo yung diagram kanina, ito pakita natin before tayo mag-proceed. Nandito na tayo sa formulate na hypothesis. Ang sunod po doon, you will conduct the experiment. No? Then, of course, after mo i-conduct the experiment, you will collect and analyze the data. Now, it will depend on the result, no? Kung correct or kung nag-fail yung hypothesis mo. If it's correct, then of course you will draw your conclusion na and you will communicate na the results. Tapos na, kasi napatunayan mo ng tama yung hypothesis mo or nakakuha ka ng favorable na result. Kung nag-fail naman po yung hypothesis mo, sabi nga dito sa diagram, think and try again. So which means if your hypothesis failed, you will make a new hypothesis. And with that new hypothesis, you will conduct another experiment. You will again collect and analyze the data of that experiment. And then, decision making ulit. So, magpapaulit-ulit po hanggang sa maging satisfied ka kung nasagot po ba yung tanong mo. Yan. Kaya talagang hindi po biro yung yung actual na experimentations o mga experiments in the real world setting. Ayan, kagaya po niyan. After na hypothesis, sabi nga natin, experimentation. Number 4, develop and follow a procedure. Include a detailed materials list. Actually, pati po yung sukat, no? Kasi hindi mo masabi. Baka mamaya, adjustment lang pala sa sukat no, or dami ng materials mong kailangan. Then, makakuha ka na ng tamang or favorable na conclusion. The outcome must be measurable. Next, you should collect and analyze the results. Diba nasabi nga po natin kanina yun? This is the part where you can modify the procedure if needed. Which is why importante dun sa materials list mo, yung kung gaano karami ang ginamit mo, at kung ano yung sukat nung ginamit mo. Yan. You will confirm results by retesting, and retesting yan. Pinaulit-ulit ko lang po yung salita, di ba, para ayusin din po niya. You can include tables, graphs, and photographs. Now, sa conclusion, ayan, kung makikita po ninyo yung pinili natin na, di ba, na illustration dyan, include statements that accept or reject the hypothesis, or make recommendations for further studies and possible improvements to the procedures. Diba? So, it will depend on your conclusion, no, if it will either say that your hypothesis is correct or if it failed. Diba? After nun, kung na-fail, balik ka sa hypothesis. Kasi talagang huwag ka po magsasawa sa paikot-ikot. Kasi ganun po talaga sa actual setting ng science, sa world ng science. Okay. Diba? Ayan. Ayan po yung ating diagram uli. Again, as a review, mula sa hypothesis hanggang sa mapatunayan mong tama ba or mali. Kung tama, conclude ka na and communicate the results. Pag nag-fail ka, balik ka po. Pwede ka umikot sa part na to hanggang sa makuha mo yung correct or favorable na conclusion para sa iyo. Now, communicate the results. Be prepared to present the results to an audience. Expect questions from the audience. The audience. Di ba example po ngayon, nasa pandemic tayo, alam naman natin na napakaraming iba't ibang pharmaceutical companies ang gumagawa ng vaccine. So, syempre, kapag kami nakagawa na po ng vaccine, ano ba yan? Sabihin lang na, hindi, sa amin lang to, kami nagpagod dito, kami nagpakahirap dito. Sa amin lang to, bahala kayo sa bakuna nyo. Ganun ba yun? Syempre, hindi. So, of course, they will communicate the results, no? Para malaman natin kung ready na po ba ito para sa atin. And of course, usually, ito pag-present ito ay sa mga peers. So, kung siyempre, pa-present ito sa mga talagang nakakaintindi doon sa pinag-experimento nila, like doctors, and yung iba't iba pang possible na medical authorities, medical bodies, and pharmaceutical companies probably. At syempre, magtatanong yun sa kanila kasi, syempre, sino ba nakakaalam doon sa experiment kundi yung gumawa ng experiment. So, talagang magtatanong yung iba. Okay. When it comes to your observation, natin yan sa dalawa, either qualitative or quantitative. Pero let's define observation first. An observation is the process of using the senses or measurement to determine the properties of an object or event. Your observation can be qualitative or quantitative. Diba? So, ano po ang difference ng dalawa? Yung qualitative po, quality. Okay. Use your senses, diba? Smell, taste, touch, hearing, and sight to observe the results. It's a description of what an object looks like. Basically, mga physical characteristics po yun. For example, kung sa sugar, yan, nakalagay naman po dyan, sugar is sweet. Diba? So, tinikman mo, nalasahan mo, na siya ay matamis. Yan. Now, sa quantitative, from the word quantity, diba? Quantity, diba? Dami. They usually involve numbers and use measurement tools. It describes the numerical value of an object like mass, volume, density, temperature, freezing point, and boiling point of water. So, sa example natin na sugar, sabi there is 1 kilogram of sugar. Diba, ano na po ba to? Ito po yung mass. Diba? Ito po yung mass ng sugar. So, anything po na measurable na ng mga tools, no? At may involved ng numbers, sabi nga. Ito ay quantitative. Again, qualitative ay mga gagamitan mo na senses mo. Is something that you have perceived through your senses. Nakita mo, nahawakan mo, narinig mo, yung mga tipong ganun po. Yung pang difference, okay? Ito po, basically, isa pa rin pong example din, no? Sa qualitative, the flower is yellow in color. Sa quantitative naman, o yung leaf naman ang binabanggit, one leaf is 7 centimeters long. O, yun po. Isa yun na namang example, di ba? Okay, last but not the least po na topic natin sa lecture na to is yung ating variables. So, what are the variables in the scientific method? Variables are the changing qualities or characteristics of an object. Okay, dito makikita niyo po sa larawan na to yung iba't ibang klase ng variables. Bibigay po natin yung mga niyan, mga definitions na later. So, ang types po ay independent, dependent, at controlled variables. Okay. So, independent variable, ito po yung variable that is altered during an experiment. It can be manipulated. So, huwag kayong malilito. Basically, kailangan may binabago ka doon sa experiment at meron kang variable na hindi mo binabago. Huwag ka muna malilito, independent lang. Ang independent is the variable that is altered or yung binabago. Its value does not depend or get affected by any variable in the experiment. Siya lang yung binabago mo, kaya nga siya tinawag na manipulated variable. Look at this picture again. Ang independent variable, sabi nga, it's the one thing that you change. Limit to only one in an experiment. Kasi nga, kapag lahat na lang binabago mo, hindi ka makakakuha ng tamang result. For example, dito sa picture na to, the liquid used to water each plant. Huwag ka malilito sa statement ha. Ang sabi, ang independent variable is the liquid used to water each plant. Sir, ba sabi mo water, bakit soft drinks yung nakalagay? Yung water po dyan ay to water, di ba? Yung sa pagdilig, hindi po yung tubig. Okay. Intindihin po natin yung sentence. Sa tingin nyo, anong independent variable? Tingnan nyo sa dalawang picture na to. Anong mangyayari sa plant pag diniligan mo ng Coke? Anong mangyayari sa plant pag diniligan mo ng juice? Anong mangyayari sa plant pag diniligan mo ng tubig? Itong mga liquid dito, sila po yung mga independent variable. Diba? Kasi iba-iba yung mangyayari doon sa mga plants depende kung anong liquid ang iyong ilalagay sa kanila. Yun. Next variable po tayo. The dependent variable. It is a variable being tested or measured during the experiment. Itong dependent variable po yung nagbabago. Diba? Siya yung usually affected by change because of the independent variable, also known as the responding variable. Okay, now balik tayo dito. Di ba makikita ninyo, alin po ang dependent variable dito? Ang example po natin sa dependent variable ay yung height or yung health ng plant. So malalaman mo kung lumalaki ba or hindi yung plant by measuring it using, sa example na to, using a ruler. Diba, ano kaya, lalaki ba sila kung tubig, kung juice, or kung soft drinks or soda ang ilalagay mo. So, ang dependent variable mo ay yung height or health ng plant. Doon mo makikita kasi, diba, kung lumalaki ba siya or hindi. Or pwedeng mamatay, depende po, diba? So, sa next variable is the controlled variable. A variable that is kept the same during an experiment so that it cannot affect the result of the experiment. Dito po, everything you want to remain constant and unchanging in the way is a definition of control. For example, it doesn't matter what type of plant that you use dito. No? It doesn't matter kung gaano kalaki yung paso. It doesn't matter kung gaano karaming amount ng liquid ang gamitin mo. For example, 1 litro, 1 lata, ng Coke, ng juice, or hindi importante yun kasi ang sinasabi dito sa independent ay yung kung ano lang na type ng liquid. Hindi niya iniintindi yung kung gaano karami. Yung type lang yung habol. Yun ang control variable. Okay, soil type, hindi rin po importante. Okay, yun po ang differences ng independent, dependent, at controlled variables. Now, sa ating pong modular activity po, no, meron po tayong link bibigay po sa chat box. Kung hindi ka po naabol, meron din po siya actually na dito, nakalagay din po yung sa soft copy ng module. Lalagay na lang po natin sa description siguro namin. Okay, sa post-test, of course, titignan po natin kung ano po ang inyong naintindihan. Susukatin po natin using a short exam. Meron po ulit sa chat box. So, kung hindi ka po nakasali sa live exam, sa araw po or sa oras nito, sabihan nyo lang po ako para maibigay ko sa inyo yung link ng inyong section. Ito po ay may time limit. Okay, sa assignment po, no, ang deadline po ng assignment natin ay sa start ng next meeting. So, meaning meron po tayong 1 week. No? Ang bawat section po ay may kanya-kanyang assignment, may kanya-kanyang link sa mga assignments. So, please wait for the link at the chat box. Okay, as a summary po, remember, ito po, steps to follow the scientific investigation include asking questions or problems, gathering data, forming a hypothesis, conducting an experiment, gathering and analyzing evidences to support the hypothesis and making conclusions. So number 2 po, qualitative observation, use your senses. Okay? Sight, smell, taste, touch, and hearing. So, quantitative po as long as nagkaroon na ng measurement or numerical value using measurement tools, yan, quantitative na po siya. Ang independent variable po na altered or manipulated sa experiment. Ang dependent variable po, siya po yung ating tinitest or mini-measure during the experiment. Siya po yung naapektuhan ng pagbabago ng independent variable. So, siya po yung ating responding variable. Last but not the least, yung ating control variable. It is a variable that is kept the same during the experiment so that it cannot affect the result of the experiment. Okay, thank you very much po sa pakikinig po sa video na to. Again, if you have any questions, please give me a PM and I will be answering them as soon as I can. Maraming salamat po and have a great day.